Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is John Literal, host of Literal Truth Biblical Studies and also literaltruth.com. I'm making this video and it's mostly going to be directed toward the audience of my BitChute channel, Literal Truth Biblical Studies, but I will probably go ahead and upload this one up to my regular BitChute channel as well on Literal Truth. Because what I want to do is I want to make people aware of a book that I wrote and published in 2013. And this one is called A Complete Comparison of the Four Gospels. All four Gospels with parallel passages side by side with explanation and harmonization. And this is one of those books I've written and published, I'd say over 20 books. I haven't actually counted up the books that I've written and published over the years, but I'm guessing somewhere around 20 plus. And this one's one I did 9 years ago. And of all these books, I think this one is probably the one that I was the most careful and meticulous when putting it together, because I had to be. With a book like this, there was no room for error whatsoever. A tremendous amount of research went into this. I was very careful that everything was as correct as it can possibly be, because this is basically a reference work. This is not one of the types of books that you pick up and read from cover to cover. This is a study tool, and I'm going to show you how it's laid out here in a minute. And keep in mind, this was during a time when I was a Roman Catholic, and my position on the Bible has evolved and changed up until now, since the time that I wrote this. And so when I put this together, I put this together as being a tool that someone who wants to defend the harmonization of the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, if you want to compare, because here's the thing, when it comes to the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, these were four different writers. Matthew and John were actually of the 12 apostles of Jesus. And then Mark and Luke were not of the 12. They were actually co-workers. They were taught and trained by the apostles. So they all wrote accounts about the life, death, the birth, and the ministry of Jesus. You know, two of them were eyewitnesses. Two of them were actually taught by Jesus himself, and two others were taught by those who were eyewitnesses. So they write about the same thing, you know, the life, ministry, death, and resurrection of Christ. And when you compare these stories, you find that there are differences among them in the details, differences in their reporting. Now, when it comes to apologetics, Christian apologetics, and defending the reliability of the Gospels, there are different positions that people take. The position that I was taking when I wrote this book was one that I was taking the position that there are no contradictions in the Gospels. Now, I've talked about this in previous videos, and you know, I don't hold that position, and I don't think it's even necessary. But that's not the point of this video. But I do want to say that, yes, when I put this together, my goal was to make the comparisons and put the gospel accounts side by side in those places where they are talking about the same events. So at a glance, you can look at the same accounts written by different authors and compare the differences. And there are differences in the details in some of these writings. And so what I'll do is I took a screenshot. You know, this is the webpage. I'll put the link in the description box below to to where you can download the free PDF. As you can see right there is where you can just touch that and download it. And so feel free, if you decide you want to download this free PDF, use it however you want. I don't care if you use it to quote from, or even, use it to put on a website. Do however you want to do it. You've got my permission to copy from it however you want. So to take a look at it, this is the event in the Gospels where Matthew, Mark, and Luke, all three talk about the same event, about the leper. And as you can see, I'll zoom in. I give exactly the passages. It's in Matthew and Mark and then Luke. And then, as you can see, I put all three passages side by side. So you can read Matthew, compare it to Mark, compare it to Luke, and look at where they agree and where they may have a similar, or where they may have differences in detail. So I also added a very important feature to this: comments. This is commentary by, sometimes I quoted from, multiple sources, as you can see here. Cornelius Olipide and John McAvilly. These were expositors of Scripture, and so I quoted from them. There's a lot of places where I quoted from Augustine of Hippo from the 5th century, one of the great early church theologians. And he actually wrote a whole work called The Harmony of the Four Gospels, where he actually goes through and compares them and harmonizes them. So I did quote a lot from Augustine of Hippo as well. So, you not only have all the Gospels side by side, you also have commentary that harmonizes them, compares them, harmonizes them, talks about the differences, and, these, the ones that I put in there set out to prove that these were not contradictions. And then I also added a very interesting feature onto this as well. And this is a work that was actually written in 150 AD, and it's called the Diatessaron, written by a very early church writer by the name of Tatian. And what he did is he took the four Gospels and put them all in chronological order and actually linked them all together. A very unique work. I mean, it's extremely impressive that he did this back in 150 AD. And so the work survives. So in all the sections that I put side by side and compare, I also add the section on the Diatessaron where he connects them all together and makes it flow together, and all the different passages, linked together. So it's really, that was an amazing work that Tatian did. So I did add that in there as an extra feature. And so in this book that I put together, this whole project, I not only, had the Gospel of Matthew and then put the other Gospel sections side by side to it, but I did all four Gospels that way. So after the Gospel of Matthew in this book, I have the whole section on Mark. So Mark is the primary one. And then the other Gospel accounts and their sections side by side. Then same with Luke, and then same with John. In fact, you'll find in some of the Gospels, especially in the Gospel of John, there's material in the Gospel of John that none of the other Gospel writers wrote. And there's also in all Gospels, in Matthew, in Mark, and in Luke as well, they have sections that they wrote when writing about their Gospel account that was unique to them too, that none of the other Gospel writers wrote about. So it's all there, all together. All four Gospels are like this in this book. And so it's one of those things, I guarantee you, you're not going to find a work like this that is any more thorough than what I made this one right here. There are works out there that compares the Gospels, but typically, I'm not aware of anyway, there's not a work where it actually adds commentary, and especially none that also adds in where it's all weaved together. So it's one of those books like I said, I wrote it 9 years ago, or published it 9 years ago. I took a lot of time. I was very careful with it, and I published it. So, I've been putting a lot of my books on PDF and putting it on my website so people can download them, my books. I've never been in it for the money, never one time. I've always put the books that I've written and published, I've always put them at a very low price, never worried about, the royalties. And especially the last 3 books that I've written, I put them at the lowest possible prices. Because there are times where I did book projects and I had co-authors as well. So, I worked out deals where they got the royalties of the book. So I didn't make it as low as I could have on some of those books. But this is a book here. This book that I'm specifically talking about now is a book that I did all by myself. And so anyway, you can get it on Amazon in print or Kindle for a very reasonable price. It's a very large work, very thick, a tremendous amount of content. And, but, even at that, I still tried to put it as low as I could. The bigger the book, the more content, the more that it costs to print it. So, but anyway, you can get it for free on free PDF. Like I said, I'll leave the link in the description box below. It is definitely an excellent study tool to have on your bookshelf. It's just, if you are wanting to compare the Gospels and wanting to a work that that defends the reliability of and the harmonization of the Gospels, then this book will serve you well. So folks, I'll go ahead and end the video here. I appreciate everyone. Take care. Have a good day.